Valery Gerasimov life story. Valery Gerasimov is a prominent Russian military officer who has played a central role in shaping modern Russian military doctrine and strategy. Here's an overview of his life story. Early life and education. Gerasimov was born in the city of Kazan and entered military service early in life. He graduated from the Kazan Suvorov Military School, a military boarding school, and later attended the Kazanskoye Higher Tank Command School, graduating in 1977. Valery Gerasimov, early life and education, full name, Valery Vasilyevich Gerasimov, date of birth, September 8, 1955, place of birth, Kazan, Tatar SSR, Russian SFSR, Soviet Union, now Kazan, Republic of Tatarstan, Russia. Family and background. Valery Gerasimov was born into a working-class family in Kazan, the capital of the Tatar Autonomous Soviet Socialist Republic, (SSR), which was then part of the Russian Soviet Federative Socialist Republic, RSFSR. There is little public information about his parents or early family life, which is common among Soviet-era and Russian military figures. His upbringing in Kazan, a significant cultural and industrial city, likely shaped his early worldview and access to Soviet military institutions. Early military interest as a young boy growing up during the Cold War. Gerasimov was drawn to the military, a common aspiration for Soviet youth in the 1960s and 70s, especially those seeking social mobility. His academic record and discipline likely contributed to his selection for specialized military schooling. Kazan Suvorov Military School. Gerasimov began his formal military education at the Kazan Suvorov Military School, part of a network of elite military boarding schools designed to prepare young men for careers as officers in the Soviet armed forces. These schools combined a rigorous general education with military training and indoctrination in Soviet ideology. The Suvorov schools were named after the famous Russian general Alexander Suvorov, and were known for instilling discipline and loyalty to the state. Students typically entered around age 14 and studied for several years before moving on to higher military academies. Kazan Higher Tank Command School. After graduating from the Suvorov School, Gerasimov enrolled in the Kazan Higher Tank Command School, one of the premier military institutions specializing in armored warfare. Graduation year, 1977. This institution trained officers for service in the Soviet Army's tank and motorized rifle units. His education included tactical command, engineering, weapon systems, and combined arms coordination. Upon graduation, he was commissioned as a junior officer, likely lieutenant, in the Soviet Army. Postgraduate military education. As his career progressed, Gerasimov continued his education through two of the Soviet Union's most prestigious military academies. Malinovsky Military Armored Forces Academy, graduated in 1987, focused on operational command of armored units at division and corps levels. General Staff Academy of the Armed Forces of the USSR, Russia, graduated in 1997. This academy is the pinnacle of military education in Russia, reserved for senior officers likely to take on high command or strategic planning roles. Coursework includes military strategy, geopolitics, and leadership at the national and theater-wide level. Summary. Valery Gerasimov's early life followed a classic path of a high-performing Soviet military officer. Working-class roots in Kazan education in elite Soviet military school, specialization in armored warfare, advanced command training at top military academies. His disciplined and methodical rise through this system reflects both personal capability and deep integration into the Soviet, and later, Russian, military establishment. Would you like a visual timeline or map showing his educational and early career path? Valery Gerasimov. Military career. Valery Gerasimov's military career spans over 4 decades and reflects a steady and disciplined ascent through the ranks of the Soviet and later Russian armed forces. He is known for his operational competence, strategic thinking, and loyalty to the Russian state. Early Soviet military service, 1977-1991. After graduating from the Kazan Higher Tank Command School in 1977, Gerasimov began his active service as a tank platoon commander in the Soviet Army. Roles during this period: tank platoon commander, company commander, battalion chief of staff, battalion commander. His early service took place during the Cold War, in a period of intense military readiness against NATO, but before the Soviet Union engaged in many modern-style regional conflicts. Gerasimov served in various regions of the USSR, gaining experience in both leadership and staff positions within armored and motorized rifle units. Graduated from Malinovsky Military Armored Forces Academy in 1987, preparing him for senior tactical and operational roles. Transition to Russian Armed Forces, 1991-2000. Following the collapse of the Soviet Union in 1991, Gerasimov transitioned into the newly established armed forces of the Russian Federation. He continued to serve in a professional capacity and gradually assumed command over larger formations. Second Chechen War, 1999-2000. One of the most notable periods in his career was his role in the Second Chechen War, served as Chief of Staff and later commander of the 58th Army in the North Caucasus Military District. This army was involved in intense operations in Chechnya. His leadership during this campaign gained recognition for effectiveness, though it was also linked to controversial tactics and heavy civilian casualties. Senior command and staff roles, 2001-2012. As Gerasimov gained experience and trust within the Russian military establishment, he took on increasingly senior roles. Key positions held: Deputy Commander and then Commander of the 58th Army Chief of Staff, and First Deputy Commander of the Far Eastern Military District, Commander of the Leningrad Military District, Commander of the Moscow Military District, Deputy Chief of the General Staff. Before his final promotion, graduated from the General Staff Academy, 1997. The General Staff Academy is Russia's highest military education institution, focused on strategic command. By the early 2010s, Gerasimov was one of the top generals in the country, known for being a soldier's general, a career officer without political ambitions, focused on discipline, doctrine, and operational efficiency. Chief of the General Staff of the Russian Armed Forces, 2012, present. Appointed November 9, 2012 by order of President Vladimir Putin. Gerasimov was appointed Chief of the General Staff, the highest-ranking officer in the Russian military. He also became First Deputy Minister of Defense. Key strategic involvements: 14. Annexation of Crimea. Gerasimov played a central role in orchestrating the hybrid military operation that led to the swift annexation of Crimea from Ukraine. Utilized unmarked troops, little green men, local militias, and cyber to information warfare. Ongoing war in Donbass, helped coordinate and supply pro-Russian separatists in eastern Ukraine, oversaw covert Russian military involvement while denying official participation. 2015, Syrian civil war, oversaw Russia's military intervention in Syria on behalf of President Bashar al-Assad. Managed strategic operations including airstrikes, base construction, and joint coordination with Iran and Syrian forces. 2. Full-scale invasion of Ukraine. Gerasimov was involved in the planning and early execution of the February 2022 invasion of Ukraine. The war's initial failures, including the failed push toward Kyiv, led to widespread criticism of Russian military leadership. Despite this, in January 2023, Putin appointed Gerasimov overall commander of the Ukraine war effort, replacing Sergei Surovikin, strategic and doctrinal influence, often linked to the so-called Gerasimov Doctrine, based on a 2013 article he authored. While not a formal doctrine, it described a modern military strategy that integrated non-military tools, cyber warfare, propaganda, economic pressure, asymmetrical tactics, hybrid warfare, as a dominant 21st century strategy. This thinking has significantly influenced Russia's military posture and foreign policy. Sanctions and international status, sanctioned by the US, EU, UK, and others for his role in Russia's aggressive actions, widely viewed in the West as a central architect of Russia's military modernization and aggression toward neighboring states. Military rank and honors rank, Army General, one step below. Marshal. Recipient of multiple state honors and medals, including the Order of Courage, Order of Military Merit, and others, seen as a loyal and capable military strategist within Kremlin circles. Summary: Valery Gerasimov's military career is marked by a rise from tank officer to Russia's top general combat experience in Chechnya, strategic leadership in Ukraine and Syria, doctrinal influence over modern Russian warfare, leadership under Putin, with deep involvement in high-profile military conflicts. Valery Gerasimov as Chief of the General Staff, 2012, present. Valery Gerasimov became Chief of the General Staff of the Armed Forces of the Russian Federation, the highest-ranking military position in Russia, on November 9, 2012, appointed by President Vladimir Putin. This role also made him first Deputy Minister of Defense, working closely under then Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu. Role and responsibilities: as Chief of the General Staff, Gerasimov is responsible for strategic planning of military operations, oversight of all Russian armed forces branches, development and implementation of military doctrine, coordination with political leadership on national defense, military modernization, training, and force readiness. This position is roughly equivalent to the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff in the U.S., but with broader operational control due to Russia's centralized military structure.